Hello, everybody. This is Frank with Iron Age News on the South Florida Conservative News Channel. It is Tuesday, May 27th, and our topic for this morning, you can't get enough of them, but here we are again because it's that season. We're talking the sabotage by stalemate. We're talking how the Senate elites plan to bleed out Trump's agenda and how, honestly, his failure in messaging has helped them do that. Okay. As we said, over the Memorial Day weekend, which were there to honor the sacrifice and service of the veterans to the United States Armed Forces, the U.S. Senate quietly tried to betray the Republic. Okay, the body has now made clear it will not pass President Donald Trump's proposed budget. The Democratic Socialists cheered. Everybody gets like that. The rhinos, of course, very, similar, very similar situation. There's very few actual MAGA lawmakers out there. There are people that were kind of aligned for a few minutes and then they were pulled back in by their masters, as you know. And this is how it is. But nobody, especially not the American people, has been offered an alternative. Worse yet, the White House has failed to make the stakes abundantly clear to the everyman. This budget is not just a line item document. We have done a number of videos explaining this. I think we've explained it better than the president explains his own policy. It is a revolutionary plan to reindustrialize America. That's what's in it. That's why it's the way it is. That's why these other organizations are starting to be closed down and hollowed out. That's why people that are complaining about food stamps are complaining about food stamps. It is all part of a larger plan, shock to the system to reindustrialize America. We're creating entirely new classes of business, okay? Hopefully to unshackle the working poor, which honestly is an issue because do the poor really, the poor really want to work? The welfare queens, as they say, do they really want to go to work? This is like a scene out of The Iceman Cometh with the pipe dream, right? And like I said, the idea was to get these poor people out of the economic dependency of programs first forged by people like Lyndon Johnson's Great Society, the war against the Black civilization, pretty much, you could say, that was fostered under his administration, could be broken. They could stop it right now or within 6 months, put it either way. Okay. Despite the budget's transformational intent, there has been no sweeping public narrative from the administration to explain what this plan is designed to do. I haven't seen it. When the president goes out for something, he's out there and he's stumping, he's doing this, that, and the other thing. Granted, he needed to tie down all these loose edges of our international security. Now's the time to turn around, get back out in the streets. I know he's a little wary to go out in the streets of the United States with the assassin squads that are out there, with the people like Comey putting pretty much the hit out on him. But still, he's got balls. He can get it going. We're here to create new industries and energy. You see, the nuclear stuff is back on the table again. The liquefied natural gas, all this stuff, AI, and domestic manufacturing. Okay. They're trying to channel this startup capital to small businesses and neglected towns and rural communities. You don't want these towns to be ghost towns. There's no reason everybody has to flee to the big city. There are plenty of things to do in small towns that will make money. Replacing the welfare dependence with pathways to real ownership and generational wealth. Instead of having to hear constantly about the reparations and this and that and the other thing, here is a chance to get out of it. You can walk away, all of you poor people. It's not just the blacks. If this program goes into full operation, not even into overdrive, but just full standard operation, all boats rise with the tide. You can be out of that, out of the life, as they would say, within 6 months, because you got to start somewhere. Obviously, there's going to be an educational element or a training element. And at that point, you're still getting paid anyway. Things can move forward in your life. Your life will change. This ratchet shit will stop. you can go out and not have to worry about being murdered for going to get an ice cream. Okay. Those things can be brought to an end. If the inner city doesn't want to do that, there's nothing I can do. All right. So his economic plan represents the first serious attempt in half a century to reverse the chains of permanent poverty programs created by the welfare industrial complex. The welfare industrial complex is obviously just as dangerous as the military industrial complex, but it is completely tied to the US government's funding of it. Okay. And the problem is, where is the messaging? Where is the moral case? Right? The people are not being told this, and they're not being told it in depth. In some places, if they were told it, maybe it wasn't told to them at a level that they could comprehend. You have the guy over there, Bissett, over at Treasury, very smart, very educated. You saw how well he did with Maxine Waters, right? She wasn't getting it, and she's supposed to be, an educated lawmaker. So imagine what chance you're going to have with somebody who maybe went to the sixth grade. Okay, that's where you have to look at this. Why aren't we telling the average person what's going on? Okay, this budget, I have said before, I'll take credit for the quote. This budget breaks the chains of Johnson's Great Society, a system that told Americans they were too poor, too broken, or too minority to make it on their own. We don't believe that. This budget will unleash your potential, not manage your decline. And that is probably more than you've heard from anybody on this subject, I would say, the average person. I know we have covered it, and I'll go back and say it again. We have covered it a number of times, in fact, because it plays so heavily into other issues that we've discussed. It always goes back to that. When the president is talking about anything, be it shipbuilding, be it infrastructure programs, be it energy, the tariffs, all those things. Why is he mad at John Deere? These are all recent articles or videos that we've done, because it all takes away from the master plan of rebuilding the country. Large scale capital investors, large scale industrial companies do not want to do this. They are bottom line. If American labor is too expensive and it's actually kept, you can talk about labor, but there's been on both sides of the aisle to make labor either too stupid, too nasty, or too something to want anybody to be involved with them. It's always adversarial to an X level. This is the influence of people like Saul Alinsky, who never had a job a day in his life, right? Except for running his mouth. Do you want to live like that, or do you want to be like the old union, I guess we'll say Hoffa era, where you're making more than the average blue collar worker who's not, right? Do you want to be able to go out tomorrow and have a $50,000 job with minimal training, maybe 2 to 3 months of training? The only way you can get screwed up out of that job is if you mess up through drugs, alcohol, or some other criminal activity. So you just have to not be a criminal 5 days out of the week, and you can have this job. And then you can find these houses, because we know the housing shortage is a lie. The reason it is a lie is because there are many houses that are available in certain states. It's just that it's not exciting to live there. Chicago, Detroit, Milwaukee, half of Indiana, all these places for years were vibrant commercial communities. Once that factory shut down, the whole place went into the toilet. The factories come back, the place gets cleaned up, people start to get homes again. If they want, they can live in apartments. I don't care what they do. But it will change. It's not a fantasy, people. That's not a fantasy. What is a fantasy is to sit around all day, robbing, stealing, tricking, taking drugs all day, and saying, man, I could be just as good as Jay-Z or whatever the hell these all people want to do these days. I should have billions of dollars. I should have a Rolls Royce, things of that nature. Well, you know what? That's not how it works. And if you have to blame God for that, that's your own problem. Go out and be an atheist. I don't care, but go out and get yourself a job, because they will be available unless the Democrats and the Republicans team up, which is now, is able to stall it, which is what they wish to do. Okay, the Senate's opposition, sorry, I had to get into that, but the Senate's opposition isn't limited to the Democrats. The most ferocious of the attackers of this plan will be Republicans with a little r. Okay, there is a festering block of establishment Republicans. They're getting whipped on by Mitch McConnell and in some cases Lindsey Graham and a few of the other ones because McConnell knows his days are numbered, but he is willing to burn the circus down. That is a sign of he's going to say he's a patriot. That guy should be drugged to a trash heap and thrown upon it at the end, just like they did with Mussolini, right? And they are quietly working to stall or dilute this Trump budget. Their motivations are pretty much the similar thing and very familiar to us. They hate Donald Trump. They resent his dominance and his dismantling of the old order. They are loyal to the swamp. These senators live off insider deals, defense industry contracts, and agencies that Trump wants to downsize if he hasn't already downsized them. Once again, as I said, the McConnell legacy. Many still operate under the Mitch McConnell doctrine, which is slow walk, obstruct, preserve Senate power at the expense of the national interest. I'm sorry. In this context, rejecting the budget is not a policy disagreement. It is a strategic betrayal, and everybody should be treated that way. I don't hold it against the Democrats because they've been betraying the government and the people of the United States going back to the time of Franklin Delano Roosevelt. The Republicans were supposed to be better than them. So if you must hate the Republicans. Okay? The other ones just don't deserve your attention. People say, why don't you argue? Why don't you go on these? We've had offers to do little debates. There's no reason to do it. There's no reason to do it. And here's why. The people that would want you to come on probably think that they are better at debating than you are, and they already have an audience that is against you. The chance that you are going to convert any of them is very low. The guys that like to go in there and do that, the Charlie Kirks and all that, they have a machine where they can go and put the videos on, and they just change the title. One video, Charlie destroys somebody. The same video from the other side, whoever it is, destroys Charlie. It's a matter of perception, and it's wrong. It doesn't get anything done, but we're not here to do that. We're here to offer information to you. You decide what you want. You're big boys and girls, okay? So the key to this whole thing is the midterm maneuvering. The Democrats want to paralyze Trump's agenda until the 2026 elections, hoping to flip enough seats to resume impeachment-style lawfare, that's what they've got. If you see TikTok, if you see Instagram, all these fake things about all these poor innocent, like we get it here because of the Cubans in Miami, all these innocent Cubans that are getting thrown into jail and everything else. It's not true. There are people that are going to jail, but they've done things wrong. Drunk driving is a crime. One last time. If you live in Florida and understand how insane the drunk driving laws and punishments are, and driving without insurance and driving on the revoked list, they're kicking people out of the country. Like, well, they did nothing wrong. I'm like, talk to any American citizen here who has been involved in any of those three things. You're lucky if they don't shoot you in the head and throw you into a ravine somewhere or charge you thousands and thousands of dollars. I think the average DUI now probably costs a citizen $20,000. They lie and say it's 8, but it's around $20,000 plus a total vacating of your personal liberties. So I call bullshit on all these videos, and we're going to talk about that in a future episode on how we can fight this stuff a little bit more than we're doing, and I'll tell you why in a little bit. So the shadow government funding that we have is out there, which is by avoiding a new budget and relying on the continuing resolution, as you remember, the federal machine continues to funnel taxpayer money to, you guessed it, partisan nonprofits masquerading as civil groups, university think tanks writing policy in the dark, media partners cloaked in grants and public service contracts, and then, of course, crisis politics. A stalled economy, you know, the old stalled economy plays into the narrative. They want the American people to see Trump as ineffective, even if they're the ones blocking change. We saw that earlier during the tariffs when all those millions, possibly billions of dollars were made when the stock market had its little shifts. That's going to happen again. You should watch that. There was a book written a couple years ago. I can't remember the name. Try to find it again. There was a fellow who was trying to track terrorist movements because when terrorists would attack the United States or whatever, and they knew it was going to have a large effect, like what he did with 9/11, they made a series of purchases either in the futures market or the stock market. So they also made money on the terrorist operation on top of everything else. That is being done as we speak. The Goldman Sachs's, Solomon Smith Barney, whoever it is out there, whoever's left, are also doing this same type of stuff. Okay. So what makes this worse is that the administration has not yet, and the budget's already being assaulted in the Senate. The administration has not yet framed this budget as a national liberation tool. Without that framing, the average voice hears cuts, not creation. They hear gridlock, they hear Medicaid, they hear Medicare, the revolutionary promise of a budget that could rebuild all these dead little towns in the Midwest and the far West, relight shuttered factories, and empower young entrepreneurs, which could be your kids, could be the 3 kids I saw graduating with real degrees from Columbia the other day. The rest were bullshit. They're all getting smothered by nobody speaking about it. Now, I don't know if the president has spoken with people in the staff and why the communications people aren't all over it, but now he needs to talk about it. He waited too long, but I would assume that he knew even if he had the cure for cancer, the minute he went to the Senate, they were going to block. People have this stupid idea that he's always playing 4D chess, and it's not that he's lucky, but he has incredible counter-punching abilities. He had to because of the business he was in. He may lead, but he's a vicious counter-puncher. Okay? And these guys are not that. They blow their load, as we say, on that first attack, and after that, they've got nothing. That's the Democratic Socialists. All right? So what needs to be done immediately, in my and a number of other people opinion, you have to get a name. He has to own this. It has to give it a powerful, purpose-driven title, not the big, beautiful bill. It's got to be something like whatever. Prosperity for the American Peoples Act, American Renaissance Budget, something big. Okay? He's got to take it to the streets. He's got to have the Senate cabinet members and small business champions on a national tour. He's got to explain how this budget will transform lives, not just reduce the spreadsheets, because we're talking about adding a couple of $1 trillion in debt. Okay. But it will, the opposition will say, well, it's going to add 2 trillion in debt. At that point, like I'd seen the video, was Marco Rubio. Rubio should just jump up and say, yeah, but we're going to erase all the debt within 5 years due to the expenditure now is just like opening a business. We've opened a business. We've had the cash. It took us 5 years. We have repaid it as far as we are not taking it out anymore. And the revenues that are coming in are more than adequate to sustain us from now on. If you remember, Trump said if he had his shipping back and he had the Jones Act, that's 80% of all ships coming into the United States and out trading with the United States would be American, which also means we would be in charge of all the revenue coming into the country, pretty much. If you recall your history, years and years ago, the entire country was run off of the customs house in New York City. That was all the funding for the United States, pretty much, was our business and trade out of the New York harbor. Okay. So he's also got to own the historical contrast. He has to expose the truth. And he can do this easily. If they're still all afraid of this other bullshit with Martin Luther King or whoever it is they don't want to put the paperwork out on, trash Lyndon Baines Johnson. Lyndon Baines Johnson dropped the N-bomb more times on tape than anybody, than 2 Chainz has. Okay? Johnson created dependency. He probably thought it was just going to suck the blacks in, but as things were changing, because he was also duped by the socialists, they figured he's just a good racist. We'll get him to do this, and then we'll just suck everybody else in, which is what happened. The poor whites and the Spanish came in too. Trump's budget will restore dignity through opportunity. We got to put faces to the fight. We have to show Americans who will benefit when this budget passes. A machinist, the welders, the single mom who now owns a restaurant or something, right? She went out and did whatever she had to do. You got to make it real. If people don't see themselves in that part, and Trump has a good flair for the theater, he has a good flair for television. This should be his thing, right? This isn't just about the dollars and cents, it's about the destiny, selling it that way, right? If the Trump administration can reclaim the narrative, and if the American people understand that this budget is about breaking the chains of a managed decline, which it is, then the swamp's plan to stall or sabotage or survive will collapse. And that only happens if the message is clear, repeated, and emotionally tied to the future of the American everyman. So the battle's on. Okay. So that's where we stand with this. And any questions, comments, you can contact us at www.southfloridaconservative.com. We are on YouTube, BitChute, Rumble, Truth, Minds. We're on everything that we can get on and get the stuff up at any time. But you can reach us for sure at www.southfloridaconservative.com. Get on our newsletter if you'd like, because we have the longer written versions of a lot of this stuff. Obviously, we have to cover less in a certain amount of time. So that's where we stand. Have a good day and be well. Goodbye.